It is the time to move to Nurit Zanger, editor of This Week, with us in studio. And we have been speaking solely about Islam, terror attacks, whatnot, but mostly Islam over the course of the last 10 days because of the Paris attacks. A lot of criticism coming towards that religion, never usually from the people who practice it, but you have something different. Right,
so we did an extensive interview on the show this week with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is a very prominent, sort of well-known critic of Islam, a very fierce critic of Islam, who in the past even took it so far as to really say that the religion needs to be sort of put aside completely. Right. Today, she's a little more moderate. She's moderated her views to say that there is this, it's the extremism, it's the extremist ideology that needs to be acknowledged and put aside. She's Somali-born, Dutch-American, who really has been under death threats for the better part of a decade, even more for her views about Islam. And as you mentioned, and even Shai mentioned before, the encryption that comes up with the Islamic State. So obviously, after the Paris attacks, we see a lot of the same conversations repeating themselves. Was it an intelligence failure? Is there a strategy? What is the strategy? The sort of scrambling on the part of leaders. Right. So we asked her, we put those questions to her, a lot of different questions about the attacks, about Islam, about what the West is doing wrong. She points to really a fundamental misunderstanding. So let's hear a little bit of what she had to say.
Let's have a listen.
Sad, actually. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised that last night at 4 a.m. when my telephone lit up that terrorists attacked a hotel in Mali. This is just something we know. They're going to continue doing these attacks, kill people. But of course, sad and frustrated and angry, thinking we need to stop these people. And the whole world is failing at preventing the mass murder of innocent humans just going on about their lives. I think the biggest misunderstanding is that they overlook the ideology that feeds young hearts and minds and convinces them that killing themselves while they're killing other people is a religious obligation. That's the biggest misunderstanding. I think if when it hit the U.S., Islamist terrorism hit the U.S. in 9/11 of 2001, I think we should have understood right away that this was a totalitarian ideology. The agents who are pushing this are invoking Islam and Islam's holy book, Islam's founder, and concepts that are central to Islam, such as jihad and martyrdom. And if we had understood that, then I think we would have had the time to see who are these agents, what exactly are they saying, where are the resources coming from, who are they targeting, and then develop a counter narrative to that. And that's what we keep failing at.
Fascinating, because the counter-narrative to the ideology we've heard many times in our studio over the course of the last several days, it's the ideology that needs to be killed, rather than outward war, rather than planes, and that's a fascinating point. What
that
else?
Not just troops on the ground
exactly.
can do much. And she actually continues this. The issue very closely linked to what she just said is the issue of the term radical Islam. We've seen a big reluctance on the part of the Obama administration to use those terms, even in the last Democratic debate. Also, Hillary Clinton pressed on the issue a little
very lightly,
uncomfortable moments. And she goes on to say that we really do need to use those terms, that the Obama administration needs to use those terms, because not using it is actually not just symbolic, it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what it's about. So another sort of excerpt we spoke to her about on a more personal side. She has an incredible personal story. Charlie Hebdo, earlier this year in January, of course, sort of raised this whole issue of freedom of expression and things that are perceived as mocking Islam. She is no stranger to this. Her collaboration with Theo van Gogh on the 2004 documentary Submission ended in a big tragedy with Theo van Gogh, the director, being murdered. So she spoke about this. We asked her a little bit about, is she afraid? Because this is also a big question that comes up also for the journalists of Charlie Hebdo. What do you do after? Are you afraid? Do you censor yourself? Do you continue? Here's what she had to say on that.
Again, this is exactly what they want. The idea of terrorism is to sow fear. It's to sow discord. We now know that we have to be careful and we have to prevent these terrorist attacks from happening. But again, the phase before that, the people, when I was sworn into Dutch Parliament in 2003, ambassadors from Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Malaysia, and Pakistan came to visit my party leader and said, could you please fire her because she has insulted Islam? Again, I want us to shift focus. I want us obviously to prevent the next terrorist attack and take the appropriate measures. And there we can learn from Israel. But we also need to focus on the phases before that. Who are these ambassadors? Why are they demanding such heavy punishment for insulting the Prophet? Why are they interfering in the affairs of other countries on the ideological basis? Why do we keep giving them what they want?
Is she living in hiding?
Sort of. She's the founder of the AHA Foundation,
right.
A women's rights foundation. She's living in the United States these days, but security is a big issue. We can't send cameras into her place of work and so on. So definitely the locations of where she does interviews and so on is something that she keeps under wraps. She's under consistent death threats. And actually something else she mentioned about Theo Van Gogh, the director of this film she collaborated on, was that she was under death threats for years before she had security. He did not, right. Which is why she believes that it ended the way it did. And in his assassination, there was actually a note left to her reminding her of the threat. So that's definitely something she's faced very clearly. But, it's important to mention she is, controversial also, not just from the extremists. Moderate Muslims also see her sometimes as controversial. Just last week, there was a report in Salon magazine about her, a Muslim woman writing that Ayaan Hirsi Ali actually sort of attributes this brand of Islam that she grew up with in Saudi Arabia, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, this Saudi Arabian Wahhabism, a much more extreme version.
ISIS Wahhabism is what ISIS practices. Right.
So she sort of criticizes her, saying, look, she grew up under this brand of Islam, a very extreme brand of Islam that sort of says everything must be by the book, which is something that she references a lot in our interview, and that this is not the case, that there's a billion Muslims who don't see it that way, who don't view the Quran in this very, very sort of literal way, and that she should not speak for them. So she continues to be very controversial.
That need their own voice. I think it's a fascinating discussion, of course, one that they'll be having in the United States most likely for many, many months to come now, especially on this election year. Nuit Zanga, this airs tonight, right?
Right, 7:40 GMT.
7:40 GMT, and this week on I-24 News. Do watch it, an important and interesting interview. That was it for us today. Of course, check us out, I-24 News Morning Edition, Facebook, Twitter, all those social networks that Shai Renga loves so much. And tune in tomorrow morning for another edition. For now, stay with the channel for the news of the day.